Okay, so today's Friday. Today's the second session for the infrastructure squad. So we're gonna pick up from the exciting stuff we did last time.
Backend.
Backend.
Backend or Google.
Sorry, backend squad.
I thought I was in the wrong class.
Some people's pressure were already rising.
Yes. All right. So this would be the backend squad. I'm going to mute everyone, and we'll follow the same pattern. We'll go through some concepts, and then I'll pause to ask questions. Okay. Today, though, we're not going to have as much new concepts as we will have practicing what we've learned so far. Okay. We're going to expand on what we did the last time. But I just remembered something, so I'm going to stop recording. Or, well, I'll keep recording. We're going to have our daily stand-up. Okay, so remember, like yesterday, we're going to run through each person. And the format is you say what you've done, what you did since the last session to now, pertaining to backend, what you plan on achieving between now and the next session, not now and the end of the course, but now and the next session, and any blockers that you have. Okay? So like for those who were in the front end squad yesterday, this will be familiar, which I think is most of us. So I'm going to go through the names on the list to say what you have done, what you plan on doing between now and the next session. Now, not between now and the end of time, and any blockers that you have. Okay? No questions unless it's absolutely necessary, and no conversation. Even if there's a question, we'll defer answering it and solving it after the stand-up as much as possible. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go down the list, and top of the list here, we have Ada. So unmute and
Unfortunately, I didn't attend the first class, so I have no updates as at now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is my first backend class.
Okay.
Technically.
So you guys should be recording this.
Yes, I said already that I will record it. I'll leave it recorded. Okay. And I'm only saying first name. So next, Ayotomi.
Last time we downloaded MySQL and Postman, and I'm hoping we get to work more on the server. There's no blockers.
Okay, thank you. Very nicely done. Next, Bimbo.
Hi, yeah. Last time, just like Tommy said, we downloaded MySQL. I couldn't get it to download. I think that's an error from my part. But I did download Postman, and I'm looking hopefully to be able to expand on that today.
Okay.
There are no blockers.
Sweet. All right, Dapo.
I managed to get my MySQL working with Node.js. I had some issues with the version 8, but I've managed to work it out, and it's all working now. And I did some Postman tests using Get and Post, and hopefully there's some more this week.
Okay. Do you have any blockers?
No, I resolved it yesterday. I was yesterday. I had a blocker, but it's all gone now, and so it's all good.
Sweet, awesome. All right, isn't it? I think you're muted. All right, I'll move to the next person, Wenga.
I downloaded Postman and MySQL. I'm having trouble with getting MySQL client. I can't get the MySQL prompt on command prompt. So today I plan to hope to get it working, and that's my only blocker.
Okay. So after the class, I think in the after party, we'll see if we can resolve that for everyone. Jimmy?
So last class, I downloaded Postman and MySQL, and this class I hope to be doing more with those two. I'm hoping more for Postman and no blockers, I think.
Okay, awesome. I don't know, what's that next name? Ohan? Ohan? I can see what the name is. Whoever's next after
O'Brien.
O'Brien. O'Brien? Okay, we'll have Ralph.
Yes, so on my end, last time we downloaded, let me see, I downloaded the Postman. I'm having issues with the SQL for some reason, but I was able to create the route handler for the route that worked successfully connecting. I think that, yeah, my biggest problem is just that SQL, getting it to work. So
Okay.
that's, yeah, creating the table and all that. Yeah, I haven't been able to do that yet.
Okay. All right. And good work with using the right terms. Route handler.
I'm looking at it. I take notes, so.
Okay, very good. All right, next, Rocky.
Hi, so I downloaded SQL after a few setbacks. I downloaded the SQL 8 and then had to come back to SQL 5. Thankfully, I finally got it working. Just downloaded Postmates, looking into it. No other blockers.
Okay. All right, 1Z.
Hi. I have not downloaded anything yet. I'm sorry.
Okay. What's your goal for between now and the next one?
And the next class?
Yes. So your goal for between now and the next class, what do you hope to get done?
To get up to speed.
Okay. All right. Next, Polayemi. Is Polayemi there? It doesn't have audio connected.
So I was able to do the Postman, but I can't seem to finish the MySQL. That's my only block.
Okay. All right. So we'll work on it right after and see if we can clear that blocker for everyone. Okay. And yes, so that will end the stand-up. We got it done in a little over 5 minutes, about 7 minutes, which is great. Like I mentioned during the Scrum overview, the time box for
Sorry,
stand.
sorry, you guys sorry to
Yes.
butt in. I think a couple of people are waiting to be let into the room.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I'm scrolling. Yeah, please, let's try to make it in on time. Normally, I wouldn't even bother dealing with anyone that's not in at 6, but, you know, we'll stay flexible. Okay, so like I mentioned during the Scrum overview, that for stand-up meetings, right, the time box is usually 15 minutes. It should not take longer than 15 minutes for the daily stand-up. If it's shorter, that's good. You don't have to use up to 15 minutes, but that's the max time you can use. Now, one of the things I was going to mention as well is that over the course of this course, right, if you're interested in like being a Scrum Master, right? And stuff like that. I'm going to start giving opportunities for people to practice. So I'm, over time, not going to do the stand-up. I'm going to have somebody else run it, right? Maybe when we do one of the plannings or the reviews, you can volunteer to run it or run a part of it. And you can use this to get some practice as well, okay? So I'm probably going to do a couple more stand-ups, then maybe we can rotate it amongst people who are interested, but have somebody else actually drive the stand-up. And it's a soft skill. Well, it's not really a soft skill per se, but it's also kind of a soft skill, but something that you practice and you get used to. Okay, now, please give me 1 second. I'm roasting here. Okay, all right. So now let's get into the class. So last time we learned how to install Express, like we learned, how to use npm install, right? We learned to install Express. We learned how to write a web server with Express, a very, very basic web server. We learned how to define a route handler, right? By creating, by using the Express function to create a new server instance, and then having it listen on a specific port, right? We learned what a port is. Can anyone remember what the default port for web is? If you go HTTP to web address, what's the port that you're going to?
80.
Yes. The port 80 is the default port for HTTP requests from a browser. So when you go to www.whatever, it's actually going to port 80. Now you can go to a different port. Can anyone remember how you go to specify a port other than 80?
You have on the URL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have the host name or IP address and then colon the specific port number.
Okay. And now, when you go to a URL, to web address, it serves up the root, right? Can anyone remember how you represent the root or what the root is?
Is it the slash?
Yeah. The root is first slash. Okay. And then we had to create something on our web server to handle the requests going to the root. What did we call that? Anyone?
You mean the gets one?
Yes. What do we call that get method on? Yeah.
A root handler.
Right. Yes. So we create a route handler for a specific route. So for the root route, we create a route handler for slash, and that handles any request going to slash, right? Going to the root of the application. Okay. Now, last week we also looked at MySQL. We talked about what databases are. We talked about relational databases, right? And the fact that you have entities that are related to each other. And so relational databases allow you to relate different entities. I use the example of a company and employees. So you have people, and you have a company, and people work for a company, so you can relate them. And a company can have departments, and people can work in a department of a company. All those are relationships, and a relational database allows you to, in its structure, connect them, right? We'll talk more about it. We'll touch it a little more in this class, in today's session, because we're going to look at constraints and keys. We're going to look at keys and constraints and help you understand more how the relationships are defined in a database. Okay. And then we talked about tables, and we talked about, we actually went through creating a table. And then we looked at basic SQL. Remember, SQL stands for, who remembers what it stands for?
Structured query language.
Yes, structured query language, right? And if you want to say it and sound cool, all right, you don't go and be saying SQL. People are going to be like, who's this new? Right? You say, I'm going to write a SQL query. You're like, oh, all right, okay. So,
Okay.
so you got to be smooth about it. Don't say it like it's a really hard thing to say. You say, yeah, I'm writing a SQL query. So for short, we just call it SQL or MySQL, right? You hear some people say MySQL, and you know that, okay, this guy's is just a letter. Like we say. So SQL, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, right? So that's SQL, structured query language. And it's the language of databases. Like I said, most relational databases and even a lot of non-relational databases support, SQL. Now there are variations across them when you get to very database specific functions. And I mean functions in that very sense, functions. So when you try to execute some functions, each database has its own way of defining those functions because they're specific to it, all right? And then the last thing that we did was we connected our server to MySQL using the MySQL module in Node.js, right? We installed the MySQL module with npm. Remember, we did npm-save so that it writes that dependency to what file? Who remembers what file?
Package.json.
Yes. So it writes the dependency to package.json. Okay. So when you do npm install -save, it writes an entry in package.json that module you just installed is a dependency for your application. Now, if it's a development dependency, which means you want it to be a dependency, but you don't want it to be part of the product, right? Like a test suite or a test framework, then you save dev. So it could be -save -dev. And that saves it as a dev dependency. Okay. All right. So today, and then, we did write our front end. We wrote our back end server. We wrote a handler for the route. Okay. And we connected it to the database. We processed some inputs. So we use a tool like Postman or whatever to post to the database server, or to post to the endpoint, which wrote it to the database. Okay. Today we're going to continue from where we left off. And we're going to talk about a few different concepts. One, we're going to redesign our route handler in a more best practice way. Okay. I'm going to show you how you should organize your file system and write your route handlers in a more sustainable and manageable way. Okay. We're also going to talk about security because we're at the point where we're actually getting data from outside of the application. We'll talk about the security implications of that and how to mitigate it. And I actually did something in the last class. I didn't explain what it was. I said I would explain it later. We'll explain it today. But it has to do with security, right? And then we will look at relationships in the database. And we'll look at some more queries, right? Some other types of queries and other things that we can do on the database side. Okay, that's what we have on our plate today. It sounds like a lot, but we'll all come together very nicely. Okay, so I'm going to come back here my Visual Studio Code, and I'm in the classroom app that we're working on. Let me collapse this. I'm going to collapse web app. I'm going to open up my index.js, which is where we were having fun the last time. Okay, this is the server that we wrote, and this is the route handler for our server. And we set up 2 routes. Oh, yes, we did also talk about HTTP methods and the difference between get and post. Can anyone say what the difference is? What does post do and what does get do?
Get is a request for a response from the server, while post posts data to the server.
Okay. That is, yes, that's right. Now, I'm going to expand on that, and I want you to take note because this is important. Semantically, while post is for sending data to the server, there are other methods that also send data to the server. But post,
Of course they are.
yes. Now, post, each method has, the different methods that post data to a server have semantic uses, right? The semantic use of post is to create a new entry, okay? When you use post, you're typically trying to create an entry that did not exist. So you're sending data to the server is going to take it, and your code should typically take that data and create a new entry. Now, when you use put, which also sends data to the server almost identical to post, put will typically update an entry, right? Rather than create a new entry. So we may explore that today, but put will typically update an entry rather than create a new entry. And put will typically take the payload that you send to put is typically the entire entry itself, but updated. Now, patch also sends data to the server, but patch will typically update part of an entry. So let's say I want to make a call to update just the first name of a person. I would make a patch call with only the first name and the new value for first name, right? So my JSON object would just be first name and the new value for first name. It doesn't have to be everything. Puts typically should be everything, right? Now, of course, these are best practices. The code will do whatever you write it to, whatever you write it to do. You get what I mean? It will do whatever you write it to do. But when you write it, you typically should obey those rules. Okay? So let's look at this, our index file. One thing that you will notice is that here we have app.get slash, right? App.post slash. These are route handlers for the same route. They're handling this different methods, but for the same route. Now, if we had an application, right? This is fine because we only have the one route. It's just the root route, right? What if we had a lot more routes? What if we had 15 routes, each with 4 methods? There would be 60 of these. This file would become huge. They'll just keep growing and keep growing. A common rookie mistake is to define all your routes in the index with all their handlers and all the logic that's used to handle them. That's a very common rookie mistake. There's a much better way of doing that. I will explore that. But first, let me ask you, if we wanted to change these routes to handle, rather than going to the root of the server, we wanted to go to /people, right? So let's say I wanted this, and I'm going to go to Chrome here, and this is where we had that server, right? If I wanted to do this, /people, okay? That's where I want to go. What do I need to do here to make it handle that route? Anyone? I want a guess. It could be a wild guess or an intelligent guess. We'll judge it when we hear
Why not slash people instead of slash?
it. Okay. So I'll have you judge that guess yourself. Is that an intelligent guess or a wild guess?
Dude, you should be happy I'm even bold enough to guess anything.
Okay.
Look, I remember the theory. I remember what I read from the last class, but I still don't understand what I don't even know what this is under. Whether it's Node.js or just JavaScript or just
This is Node.js.
Node.js.
This is specifically Node.js because this is
Right.
server side. It is JavaScript as well, right?
Gotcha.
But it is server side JavaScript because we're writing a server and we're writing capability for a server. And the only way today, well, the most common way today to do that is with Node.js. So this is very specifically Node.js, but it's also JavaScript. Right. So yes, remember that route handler for slash handles the route ending with slash here. So now that we've made it slash people, really the mapping is the same as here. If we now do this, people, right? Change that to people. Then we now actually have a handler for people. So if I do node and I run that, oh, sorry. Node index, right? And I run this server now and I refresh this, it's actually now handling people. But see what happens if I try to go back to the root of the application. All right. I have that. It says cannot get slash because there's no route handler for the root. So if I came in here and I set up app.get, right? I remember the callback function takes a request and a response argument, right? And this is an arrow function here. And I say, come on.
I think
And I
you
say,
left a space.
oh yeah, I did. I can see it's correcting it. That's not proper arrow function. So here, if I say response, and res is short for response, right? So that's a response object. So let's send welcome, right? And now, remember, I have to stop this. Let's start this again. And when I refresh this, now I have something on my root route. I come back to my people route, I have my people there. Okay. Let's install a dev dependency that will make our lives easier. You notice you have to stop the server and start it again for your changes to take effect. We're going to install a dev dependency called nodemon that will save us from having to do that. So we can just save the file and test it immediately. So how do we install a dev dependency? What do I need to do to install it as a dev dependency? Anyone?
Save dev.
Save dev. And this is a good dependency because now, rather than saying node index, I'll say nodemon index. And you see what it says here? It's running that and it's monitoring. Okay. And now if I come here, if I go back here and I refresh this, we're still on welcome, right? I come here and I change this. Welcome here, and I save that. You notice node 1 has automatically detected my change and did some stuff. And now I can just come here and refresh. I don't need to constantly stop my server and start it again. Node 1 takes care of that for me. So it's a good dev dependency, but you want to keep it as a dev dependency. You don't want to accidentally deploy it or bundle it with your application. All right. Any questions so far?
Can we install it just like you did?
Now, don't install it like I did. Okay? Don't install it like I did. When I push and you pull, after pulling, run npm install.
Okay.
Okay.
What we have to run the install after we pull.
Yes,
once
after
you
you pull. Okay. Yes, once I push, after you pull, run npm install. And that's a good practice to have. Whenever you pull, run npm install, because if someone has added a library or a package, right? You want to make sure that you have the latest packages, right? So it's always good practice when you pull, run npm install. Even for the front end app.
So that npm install will look at the new files, see if any directory is needed, and grab it and do the install for me as well.
Right. It will look at package JSON.
Yes. Okay.
Because when you pull, you get a new package JSON that has a new dependency. So npm install will look at package JSON, find any dependencies there that it doesn't already have, and install them. So it always makes sure that what it has installed matches what's in package JSON. Okay. All right. So we'll proceed. Now, so I talked about how, okay, now look, this file is starting to grow kind of hairy, right? It's starting to grow a little hairy. So what we need to do to prevent it from being hairy is we can actually organize our routes better. These route handlers form kind of what is called a controller in MVC, right? Controllers have actions. I won't go too detailed into that, but essentially what we want to do is to kind of structure them kind of like controllers with actions so that each method is a different action of a particular controller. So to achieve something like that, a nice starting pattern is to create a folder, right? So we're going to create a folder in Classroom. I can just do that here. And I'm going to call it routes, right? Now the first named route I have here is people. So in routes, I'm going to create a file called people.js. Okay, it's going to be my route file. And this is going to introduce a new concept in Node. We're going to get to it. And then I'm going to take my methods here. Okay, so my get and my post. Let's take them here. We'll take them out of here. And we're going to put them in people. Okay. Now, of course, these have a dependency on connection. That's not defined, right? So we need to come here and let's just take our database connection here. So we start here. So we're going to cut that. We're going to put it in our people work. And This database connection depends on this MySQL here, so let's come get this one here. Got this out of here. And okay. Now, if we save this, we have our people route file, right? But it doesn't really do anything yet. The app does not know about it. So if I actually come here now and I refresh, if I try to go to people, I refresh this, it says cannot get /people. Okay, so I haven't defined a route handler for people. I mean, I've moved it out into another file. I've moved my logic into another file, but I have not actually made it a route handler. So what I need to do is I need to make this file essentially a route handler, and then I need to connect it back to my app server. I need to make my app server aware of it. So what I'm going to do here is, and the steps for doing that is, first I need to import Express again. So const Express. Who remembers how to import? Does anyone remember how to bring in an external package? Anyone?
Require.
Require. I'm going to require Express. This is just the same way that that we did it, in the index file, right? So we're going to require Express, and then we need to get an object out of Express, like a base route object, right? Out of Express that we will then define the handlers on. So we're going to say const route equals Express the router, right? Oh, hold on. Let me take a peek to see what the right syntax is for that. I've forgotten that. So what we want to do is want to define, yes, okay, I actually did it right. So it's express.router. This gives us a new router. Let's call this router. This gives us a new router object. And here now, we can now define route handlers or method handlers on that router object. So we can now say router.get, right? And I'll tell you why I'm removing that slash there. I'm going to tell you why I'm removing the slash, but I essentially define these here. I'll say router.post. Okay, so I'm refactoring it now, so my routing is in separate files from my server definition, right? Once I do these, the last thing I need to do in this file is I need to make this a module that I can require into this. And the way to do that in Node.js is to say module.exports equals router. And what this does is this my router here that I created and that I defined route on. I'm now exporting it out to anything that requires it. So in my index.js, here I can actually come and say const people, right? Or people router, if you want, equals require route/people. I'll explain why the syntax here is slightly different from this other syntax. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to make that my router handle a route. So here I'm going to say app.use/people router. There's a lot to talk through here, but just so we can see, if I come here now, you see, previously we were saying cannot find that route, right? If I refresh this now, we're back in business. Who's lost?
Everyone.
I know I am lost.
Me.
That's
I think
okay. Yes,
you have
I
to
will
walk
break
us
it down. That's what I was. That's what I was
If that boy is lost, then everyone's lost. Trust me.
Okay, so I'm going to walk through it. I was expecting that. If you weren't lost, I would be impressed. Okay, if you weren't lost, I'll be impressed. But let's talk through it and let's break it down. Okay, let's start from here. We're importing people router, right? So we're using the require keyword. Everyone understands that, right? That is how you get an external package or an external module into this current module so that you can use it. So what we did is we used require. The reason the path here is different from Express or MySQL, right, or body parser, is that for these ones, we're installing packages installed with npm. So when you do a require and you don't specify a path, your script will look in your npm installs, in your node modules. Essentially, when you do an npm install, there's a folder here called node modules. And what you installed and all its dependencies are here in this folder. Okay? What you install and all its dependencies are here in this folder. So if we're looking for the MySQL that we installed, if you scroll down here, you'll find it right here. It's going to be here, MySQL somewhere. That's MySQL. A lot of these are dependencies either for MySQL or for Express. If you're looking for Express, you see a folder here called Express. So this folder node modules is not committed to Git. The reason you do an npm install is that on my machine, what I have in my node modules will be different from yours because I've installed something new. And when I do a git commit and a git push, we are not tracking this folder because it's too big. So it actually doesn't get pushed. We only push package.json, which has information about what's in this folder. So when you get it, you have to do an npm install so that you can go through package.json and make sure that you have the same dependencies installed. So when you come here and you do require, right, straight like that, it looks for it in package.json, right? If you do a require with this pattern where you have a dot slash, it knows that this is not, you're not expecting this package to be in package.json. This is a package that lives relative to the script. So dot slash means in the same folder as this file. If I want to go up one level to the current folder, it will be dot slash, right? This here means in the current folder, that's the folder that this index.js is. There's a folder called routes. And in that folder, there's a file called people.js. That is what this means. So it looks for routes and looks for people.js inside the routes folder. So where's my routes? This is what it does. Comes into routes and then comes to people.js. Let me pull up my file explorer so that it'll be even easier to see. I'm going to do here. Import this here. Classroom. Okay. Do I have that? No. It's training. Right. All right. So if we come here, this is the file we're working on, index.js. Side by side, in the same folder as index.js, is a folder called routes. To go into this folder is ./routes. Okay? That's what the ./routes part is. And then this here tells me that this is a file in there called people.js. When you're doing require statements, you don't need to add the .js. It will automatically assume it's .js. You actually shouldn't, because if I do, it will try to do .js.js. So you don't add .js to it, it will take it as meaning a .js file, which means go into routes and require the script. That is what that require statement means. Any questions?
I think I might have missed it. I think I might have missed it. What's the body parser bit? The one before it.
What's the
that body parser? The
that's a different package. That's a Node.js package that we installed last week.
Right.
It
Okay.
has nothing. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the line we're talking about.
I know. I agree, but I don't remember that bit at all. Right. I just wondered what that was.
Yeah, it's a package, and we're using it here. You see that there? And this is we missed it, which is why when I was posting, the data wasn't showing up in the server. Right. Okay. And it was because we didn't use body parser. So that solved that problem. But does everyone understand what I mean here? Does everyone understand this line now?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically telling you to go and look for that file in that folder, which is in fine.
And this dot here means that folder is at the same level as the current script, which means they both have the same parent. And essentially, that means this: index and routes are at the same level, right? They're both in the classroom folder. That's what that / means. If it was .. it would mean go up one level from parent, which means go into the training. So if I did .. index.js, it would be coming here, or hello.js, it would be coming into training to hello.js. But /people, /routes means in the same folder where index is, which is here. Open up the routes folder, open up people. So that's the first part. That's just the require statement. Now I've required the routes file. And I've required the people.js file, which is this one here. I've required it into my index.js, right? When I require it, what does it give me? Right, like what does it give me back when I require it?
It gives you the file to handle the routes.
What it gives me, sorry, this is not Zoom. Sorry, this is not Zoom. Sorry about that. So what it gives me is whatever I export from it. Whatever I export from it is what it gives me. Okay? And let's demonstrate that. Here, I'm gonna add a comment here. I'm gonna add what's called a multi-line comment. I'm going to do this. And this is how you comment multiple lines rather than having to do slash on each line. Yeah. So, and then we close it with that. That's a multi-line comment. I commented all this out so that there's no route, right? I want to save it now. Now, I want to console log. I'm going to come in here, and I am going to do this. I'm going to say module.exports equals this is me, right? And if I come back here now and I console log that, console.log people router, right? You see that? This is me. If I console log let's see, if I console log 1, 2, 3, 4. Because whatever you export here is what you get when you call require. So you have to have a module that exports here in a script for you to be able to require it into another script. If I remove this line and I save that, it's empty. Just an empty object. Okay? So this is important. So in this case, what we want to export is the route handlers that we've defined. Is our router object. So express.router returns a router object. We define route handlers on that router object, and then we export the router object so that we can use it. So if I save this, oh, actually, I didn't save this one. If I save this, you see what the console log tells us? We have a router function with different handlers and all of that. Okay? So that's what module.export does. This is very important in Node.js. This is a Node.js specific command. It's not regular JavaScript. But it allows you to export one script so that it can be reused in other scripts. Remember the concept of reuse. And I'm going to ask you a question in a few minutes that will explore our thinking about reusability. So let me get rid of this here. Let me get rid of that. And then I'm going to get rid of my comments here. So let's get rid of my comments. And let's look at the final line where we actually use the router. It happens to be called, to be a method called app.use. And we're saying for the route / people, use the people router. And that is it. Okay. Now, one thing I said I was going to explain. I don't know. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? We're going to do it more. It will become, we're going to do it more. But that is how you split up into a separate route handler. It's a slightly complex way of understanding that concept, but it's an important best practice.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, when I look at this, basically the people router where it says require route / people, I'm thinking, okay, it's going to look into the people, I guess .js to see what information is there that it can choose basically a function that it's going to use in some other lines in the code. But when I look at line 15 and I see use people, I'm thinking, okay, it's going to people.js and then people router in the same line. I guess maybe it's the syntax that I'm confused about.
Now here, remember when you're talking, app here is our server, right? Remember that. Yes. App is our server. App.get. This here tells you the route on the server, not a file path. This tells you the route on the server. Remember, this connects, maps to your browser address.
Yes.
So it tells the server whenever a GET request comes to slash, this is what you do. It's this. This here tells the server that whenever a browser request comes to slash people, right? Whenever a browser request comes to slash people, now it doesn't matter what type of request, whether it's post, put, patch, delete, whatever. Any browser request that comes for slash people, right? Use the people router to handle it. I forward it to the people router, essentially saying, hey, I delegate it to people router knows what to do.
I think the issue here is they both happen to be people, but that slash people could easily be, you could easily say slash Yinka.
It could be slash anything, yes.
Yeah, and yeah,
and you're right about that. And you're right about that, right? I can say slash party, right? I come here and I refresh this, there's nothing handling slash people. Guess what? Because it is handling slash party. So this part of it is about the URL. That's what this is strictly. This here is about a file. Okay? And this here is a variable where we're storing what comes from this file, what is exported from that file. Now, for you to be able to use it as a route handler, you have to have it be an instance of a router object, which is what happens here. Which is why at the end here, what are we exporting? Router. And we created router here. Okay? So that's what's going on there. So we've cleaned it up now. It looks better because we want our server definition to be as slim as possible. Okay? This is one step in that journey. All right? So now we'll continue and on to the other aspects of it. I know I can hear the silence, which feels like a bunch of people are still lost. Let's get into some more.
I've got one question. For the various, for on your server, you could have like, I don't know, 20 folders, for argument's sake. Would I have 20 lines in this one and 20 people.js type files?
In the app.
Yeah. So where you got your people.js file?
Let me show you something. I'll answer that question right now. All right. I'm going to show you something. I'll show you a server for a project I worked on. All right. So look at this. Okay, so look at this file right here. And look at all of these. You see what this comment here says? Route handlers.
Yeah, okay, you answered my question. Yeah, all right.
You see how many route handlers? And this is just defining them. And then now come here, app.use, app.use, app.use. And those are the routes.
So Yinka, is there, so there's no package that could handle, I guess, a route handler that's out there where you just specify how many route handlers you need, and I don't know.
If there was, why would they hire you and pay you the big bucks to build it? That's your job as a developer, is to create them, right? Because here's the thing: there's no standard pattern or basic route. Each route does a different thing. If you look at the two handlers we have here, the get and the post are completely different. So someone has to write the code, the logic for what you want that route to do. Yes, you might have a tool that'll just spin up a whole bunch of empty route handlers. It doesn't save you much work because you still have to. The funny thing is that file I showed you is generated by a tool that I wrote that creates route handlers off of a database schema, right? It's called a Yeoman generator. So I wrote a Yeoman generator that you point at the database, and it will spin up a whole bunch of routes for that database. But hey, what do those routes do? Someone needs to program it. And that's because I'm a lazy developer. I did one, did two. I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to go through 34. I think there are about 34 of them. So it was faster to write a code to generate it than to do it by hand. So that's it. But no, you typically wouldn't do that. Like, you typically write your route handlers like this. Over time, you end up with a whole bunch. That's how applications are built. If you have a team of 10 people, each one's creating a couple of route handlers a day, in a week, you have a huge, robust application. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right, you're welcome. Anybody's brain burning up here? Okay, can we take a very short break? I need to sort something out right now. Okay.
Can you scroll up a little bit?
My subconscious
I'll
asking me for a break.
Yeah, so we'll just take like a 5-minute break and I'll be right back.
Okay, thanks.
Take your time.
Take your time.
So I'll leave this route handler up. Oh, actually, let me commit this and push it so you don't have to retype this. Okay? So let's do this. I'm going to commit and push. Get started.
And if any of you wants to take over the session, those of you that are following, you can use baby language to help the rest of us. See if you can catch the rest of us up.
Do blah blah route handler do.
So git pull. Okay, git push. All right. So you can pull this and look at it. You will have the new files now. I'll be right back.
Okay, I didn't want to ask this. So can I just git pull, or I have to commit first?
Did you make any changes?
On my end?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you make changes to the files that we will all be using?
Oh no, mine is all local.
What I mean is, did you make changes to files in your own folder or general files?
Oh, files in my own folder.
You created a special folder and you're doing your own thing.
Oh no, so I'm following like how he's writing the code.
I know.
Yeah.
But you're doing it in your own separate space. You created your own folder to do what he's doing, or are you using the same assets
I'm using the same.
Then if you're using the same assets, then you can't commit. You will have to. What I recommend is to copy your code and save it somewhere else. You understand? And then do a pull. If you've already saved what you are doing, then the pull is going to create a conflict, which you will now just reject changes and accept the incoming thing from Yinka. If you've not saved, then there's probably nothing to worry about. But
Okay.
don't commit unless you are insisting that we all use what you did.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Okay. Now I'll just pull then.
Yeah.
Got it.
Wale, speaking from experience, Abi.
Yes. I learned the hard way. Yeah, guilty as charged. But that one that happened to you was not my fault. That
One happened to more than me.
That one that happened to you was not my fault. That was you.
Hands up.
Oh man.
You're still a suspect.
So Wale, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
If you make a separate folder for yourself that you're working on, do you commit first before you then pull his own?
Yes, if you're making a separate folder, as long as you're not messing with everybody else's stuff, you've created your own folder and all your infrastructure is inside that folder, then yes, you can commit. If you just add your folder to folders, I recommend that everybody create a folder for themselves where they mess around with stuff inside that folder. So yes, you will have to commit that because it's still inside the classroom folder.
Okay.
Unless you're doing it outside.
You commit that and then you go into his own folder that he just did now. And
exactly. So basically, when you commit that, it adds your folder to everything and it adds his folder to everything. But your folder and his folder are not conflicting.
Okay.
Understand?
If you look in the examples, if you click on that folder there, you'll see Olawale's got his own folder, I've got my own folder. I think that's where we all saved it.
Yeah, in people. No examples, in people. Yeah, people.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you click that drop down, you'll see it.
Okay. Now, just to summarize that, remember, git add, git commit, git pull, then git push. That's your sequence. Git add, git commit, git pull, git push. If you look at what I did here, that's what I did. The git add, then I did a git commit, right? I did a git pull, and then I did a git push. Okay, so that's your sequence. Let's note that and let's remember that that'll save us a lot of pain. Okay, all right. So we've cleaned this up, and this has improved our structure. What we've learned in this segment is module.exports. Very, very, very important. Right? Now the challenge I'm going to put out there, and I want someone to see if they can solve it. Right? I want someone to see if they can solve it before the next class. Is this. So this is our open challenge number 1. It's a race. And you can collaborate. It's not a race for any one person, right? You can work together on it on Slack. But the challenge is this. You see this connection here, right? If I had 30 files, 30 route handlers, like people, that all need to connect to the database. They're all connecting to the same database, right? What is the problem with copying this and putting in the 30 files? The problem with it is I am repeating myself.
Yeah.
I remember, do not repeat yourself. Don't repeat yourself. Dry. And let me tell you where that problem is, or how that is a problem. If I decide, hey, I've changed the name of my database from classroom to classes, I have to go to 30 different files and change this one thing. That's a nightmare. If I change the username, I have to go to 30 different files and change it. That's not manageable. So how do you think I could take this and put in a file, or take this such that, oh God, I'm already answering it and solving it. Okay, we'll just do it. The challenge was going to be, I want someone to refactor this so that this is reusable. But let's just do it. Let's just do it. And we'll use it to explore the concept of module.exports again, right? We're going to create a file here in the root of classroom, and we're going to call it connection.js. Let's talk through solving it, right? How about connection.js? Let's come here, and we're going to take this whole connection stuff, all these lines here. Come on. Here, these lines. Oh, God! Sorry, I didn't keyboard rage. All right, we're going to cut all these out here, and we're going to put in our connection.js, right? We also don't need MySQL in this file directly anymore, so we can just take it out here, and we'll put it in connection.js. That's where it's needed, right? And so what we'll do here is we're going to do connection. So we're going to say const connection equals require. Who can tell me what the path is to connection.js?
//
Let's see. I do not think you're right, but let's see.
Okay.
You're close. You're on the right path. You're on the right path.
Okay.
But we're on people.
Ah, okay, okay.
But connection.js is one level up. Let me save it here.
No, I thought you're same level.
Oh, okay, you can see it.
Oh.
No, if you go back to where you were, go back.
Oh, okay, routes.
Is that the same level?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. It is on the same level. Now, but I actually did not want it to be on the same level.
Ah, okay.
Well, we can leave it on the same level. Okay, that's fine. So on the same level.
Is that right, or is that good practice or bad practice? Okay.
It's totally up to us.
Okay.
Right. The only thing is, because it is not a route, it doesn't make sense semantically.
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
Right. So, all right. So let's correct that. Let's move it out of people and move it up to classroom, right? Let's move it up to classroom. No, I got time for that. Move. All right, so I've moved it up to classroom now. So let's go back to where's our connection here. This is it, right? All right, so we're in connection.js now. All right, so what would be our route from people to connection.js? They're no longer on the same level. Connection.js is here. That's correct. So because we're going up, we're going into the parent folder. So it is going to be / connection. Okay, so that's our route to connection.js. Are we done? Will this work? There's something missing in connection.js. Who can tell me what it is?
Module export or something like that?
Yes, we're not exporting anything, so we need to do module.exports connection. And so we're exporting that's our connection. Now, this simple move here has made it such that our connection.js is now completely reusable. All our routes, if we created 1,000 routes, if we wanted to change the database name, we only need to go in that one file and change it because we've now made it reusable. Very, very important design pattern. Right? If you ever have to copy a block of code to another file, it's time to create a module. That's how you use modules. If you ever have to copy any code, if there's a block of code and you ever have to copy it from one file and make a duplicate of it, do not repeat yourself. Create a module, move the code into that module, and require it. Require it in both places, and you have that one piece of code, but used in two places. And if you ever need to change it, you only have to go change one place. Okay? Very important practice. We'll look out for this as we go on. All right. So this is done. We now have our module, right? Everything's in place. So what's the next thing? Let's look at our database and talk about relationships. Okay? Let's take a break from all the JavaScript and let's do something a little more visual. So what we're going to first talk about right now is we're going to talk about something called keys. Okay? Oh, come on. All right. This is familiar to everyone now, right? I just connected to the classroom data, to the MySQL database, and I switched to my classroom database. Okay, or my class, or to the classroom schema. That's why you use classroom. And if I say show table, I only have one table, the people table. And if I say select, now let's type it properly. If I do this, right, it shows me all the contents of my people table, which literally is what I have showing up here. Okay. Now, what I have in this table right now, I don't have a unique identifier. So let's say I want to delete, you see this row that has null on it, right? This record here. If I want to delete this record, how do I delete it? It's almost identical to the next record. No first name, no last name, no email, no anything except for the timestamp. So how would I delete it? I could use the timestamp to delete it, but what if there's something else that was created at exactly the same time? Because timestamp is not unique. I don't have an identifier on this table. So in database parlance, a good database table has a unique identifier, what is typically called a primary key. Okay, a primary key. That's usually that is typically the primary key is always unique. Let's just make that clear. You can't have duplicates on primary keys. So once you define a primary key or the database table, the value of that primary key is always unique. The database will throw an error if you try to insert a new record with a primary key that's already in use. So the easiest primary key to have on a database is a primary key that the database handles or the database manages. And the easiest thing is a number, serial numbers, from 1 to whatever. So the database auto increments that number for each next record. Okay? And that is the easiest way to have a primary key on a database table. You will come across that so much. Almost most database tables that you look at will have a primary key that's an auto increment number. So how do we add a field? We've already created this table, right? Now we want to add a field to this table. How do we add a field to this table? We need to alter the table. In MySQL, the command that we use is alter. So we're going to say alter table. What's the table we want to alter? Anyone?
Classroom.
Is classroom the table or the database?
People, I think it is.
Yes, so classroom is the database. The table we want to alter is people.
Yeah.
So alter table people, right? Want to add column, right? So want to add a new column ID called ID, and we want it to be an integer with up to 14 numbers. What's that? That billions or trillions? A few billion, right? Unsigned. Primary key, auto increment. I know I'm screwing that syntax up. Let's see, let's give that a shot. And actually, let's say before. So before first name. Okay, give me a bad finger. Oh, sorry. I spelled auto increment wrong. Auto increment. Let's try this again. So this error, you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual that corresponds to your MySQL server for the right syntax. Use mere before. Oh, okay, so let's see. MySQL alter table add field to beginning. So before or after a field already existing. Okay, let's see here. First, this is what I want. Okay, first. So let's correct this statement here. Let's see, I will put name first, right? There you go. So now if I describe people, I now have an ID field. It cannot be null. You see this? I now have a new column here that wasn't up here before, called key. And this is a primary key, right? And then you see I now have another one called extra, which is now called auto increment. Okay. Now, if I do a select all from people, watch this. Very magically, I now have a unique ID for each one. And the database will generate that. I don't need to insert that. The database will generate this for each new person. And so with that ID, I can actually come in and delete this record and delete this record. And so the command that we use to delete records is, who can guess?
Remove.
Delete.
I have two competing options. Yes, the first one was what? Remove. The second
Delete.
one was what?
Delete.
Okay. How much you got? Remove. How much you got?
$2.
We'll pitch the right answer. Let's sell it to the highest bidder. Okay, no, it doesn't work like that. Sorry, you can't buy the right answer. The right answer is delete. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I can't.
I wish I
I
had
can't
said
help.
$100.
Well, no, I'm not trying to give. I'm asking how much you're offering for me to accept your answer. It doesn't work that way. It's not that.
No.
Yeah, I'm not Warren Buffett. Sorry. I am. Well, apologies to all the Nigerians on this call, but I'm Nigerian, so you know what that means. I need to get that money. All right, so let's go on. So, sorry, I'm just trying to pull something over here. All right. So we're going to use delete, and it's very simple. The syntax is delete from, right, people where ID equals 4. And it tells me one row affected, right? So if I come here and I select again, I don't have 4 anymore. That record has been deleted forever. So I can do the same thing for where ID is 5.
Yes, see power.
And there, that record is deleted forever. Guess what I can do with ID as well? I can say select from people, and no, you do select star from people, right? Where ID is greater than 3. Right? So remember we used the where statement the last time? And we can say select star from people order by okay? There. 87654. Okay, so now that we have our primary key, primary keys are critical in creating relationships. Okay, we know what a primary key now. It's a unique identifier on the record in the database table. If you think about it, if you wanted to relate a person to a company, you would have to have a unique identifier for that person, right? To create a relationship between them and the company. You'd also have to have a unique identifier for the company to make that relationship happen, right? Imagine if I try to use the first name and last name. First name and last name are not unique. You can have 2 John Does. It's possible. It happens in real life. So you can't depend on that being unique. So the primary key solves that problem for you, is that it gives you a unique identifier, right? So if we wanted to now create a relationship between a person and a company, let's say that we want a company to be owned by a person. So if we created a company database, a company table, so let's say, remember the syntax, create table, companies, right? And the convention for a table is plural of whatever the entity type is. So create table companies, right? And we'll say, now remember we need the primary key, ID, right? And it's an int. And we'll size it up as 14 because we don't know how many companies we're gonna have, right? I will make it unsigned. Unsigned means it's only positive. A signed integer is a negative integer. It's an integer that can be positive or negative. -2 has a minus sign. +2 has a plus, sign or no sign. So a signed integer can be positive or negative. IDs can never be negative. So you just say unsigned, and that helps improve performance, right? So it's unsigned. Remember how we did it up here? Where is it? It said unsigned primary key, auto increment, right? So we say unsigned primary key, auto increment. And then we want to have a name for the company, right? Name. I'll make that a variable character. And maybe we'll only allow company names to be up to 100 characters, right? And we say it's required, so not null. Sorry. Not null, right? And then what else do we need? Website. Website. I'll say it's a var. Okay. And then we say date created. And this will just make a timestamp. Okay. So this is our companies table. Describe companies, right? This is our companies table. We can create multiple companies here. Now let's say we now want to specify who the owner of a company is, and the company can have only one owner, right? And that owner must be a person in the people table. We're going to add a field to the companies table. So alter table, remember this? Alter table, right? Companies, add column.
Bad spelling.
What did I spell wrong? For alter. Yeah.
Alter.
So add, yeah. So add column, owner ID, right? And we want it to be an integer up to 14 because owner, the ID in people can be up to 40 characters long, right? And also unsigned, not null, because the company must have an owner. Well, let's make it nullable so that you can create a company without an owner and then assign an owner later. So if I do this here and I describe companies, now I have an owner ID field, right? So if I create a company and I put in owner ID, I put 2. That means Jane Doe is the owner of that company. That's what that means. That's how I can create a relationship, right? But before we get ahead of ourselves, yes, we've created a relationship virtually. The database does not know that there's actually a relationship between these two tables. Because there's nothing telling it that owner ID is connected to ID on the people table. Is there anyone? You see any link between them?
The primary key. The primary
Sorry?
key. The primary key.
Yes, yeah, but I'm saying that in this current state, in the current state, if I didn't tell you that owner ID here is actually going to be this, is there anything that tells you or tells the database that that is the expected behavior? There's nothing right now, right?
No.
We haven't connected them together. We've just created that field. That field is there. It could be, I could put jargons in it. The database doesn't care because I haven't created any expectation that it is connected to the people table. So what needs to be done for it to actually enforce that relationship? What needs to be done for there to actually be that relationship is that we need to connect the two tables. And the way we connect the two tables is that we make that owner ID. No, hold on, I'll tell you. The way we connect it is that we make the owner ID field a foreign key. Okay? The ID in the people table is a primary key because it's the primary key of the people table. If we want to reference it from another table, we take that key and chuck it into that table as a foreign key. It's now coming in as a foreign key. So we need to make this field, owner ID, a foreign key on the people table. Okay? So let's see. How do we do that? Forgotten the syntax in my head. But it's an alter table, so let's do this. We can start it. Alter table. Alter table. Right companies. And let's do this. MySQL add foreign key. And it's gonna be, so Stack Overflow. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, let's do this. Add foreign key to existing table. And here. Okay, so the command here is, that's what we're going to use. Okay. Okay, so let's do this. Add constraint, right? Add constraint. Foreign key. Owner ID, right? Foreign key. Reference, references, people, ID. Okay. Oh, sorry. Foreign key. Because we have to say what the key is. Owner ID, right? Parentheses. It is. So with this command now, we run it. If I now check, if I now describe the company's table, look at what's different about this one. You can't see, you see that there? Now we have a more. Here we had nothing on the key, but now we have a key here. So if I try to create a new company, insert into companies, right? Now we just want to do name, website, and owner ID. Values, this wiki share tweet. Oh, come on. There's wiki share group. Right, the website is and the owner ID, we say 8, right? Select all from companies. So I now have one record, right? Are you following me? Are you guys following me? I'm going to show you something really critical here. Hello?
Question.
Okay, all right. So I just added a record to the company's table, and my owner ID is 8, which means the owner of that company is whoever has ID 8 here, right? 8 is a foreign key to the people table. Why is that important? Why is that important? It is important because if I try to do this, delete from people, right, where ID equals 8. You know what's going to happen when I do this? It's not going to let me.
An error?
Yes, it will throw an error. There's nothing wrong with my command. My command is perfectly fine because I can change 8 to 7 and delete happily. But why can't I delete 8? Because I have a relationship.
Because it's referenced on the table.
Exactly, because it's referenced somewhere else. And so the data in companies depends on that record existing. That is called a constraint. It makes it so that you can't accidentally delete important data. So if you have data in one table that's related to data in another table, if you create the relationship right, the database will help make sure that you don't screw things up by accidentally deleting important data. That is why it is called a constraint. It's an integrity constraint. And you will get a integrity constraint violation, right? You know, like the MySQL package in Node. If you try to do this, the error back will be integrity constraint violation. You're about to screw up the integrity of your data. That is one of the things that properly defined relationships are important for. You can create a virtual relationship by just having that field there. If you don't add the foreign key relationship to it, the database doesn't know that relationship exists. But once you add that foreign key, you've told the database, hey, these two entities are actually related, and this is how they're connected. Make sure I don't have IDs that don't match something. And that's what the database does. So it will prevent you from deleting the entity, the record that's referenced as a foreign key somewhere else. Am I making sense? Does that?
Question.
Yes.
What if I really did want to delete?
If you really did want to delete it, you would have to break that relationship first. So I would have to say update, and this is a statement that we haven't used yet. I either have to unset, make that foreign key null. So update, right? Companies set owner, right? ID equals null, where, or you can just use an empty string. Where, right? Owner ID equals 8. If I do this, sorry. If I do this now, I can now select from companies, right? There's no owner ID anymore. Okay? And now if I want to delete 8, I can actually delete where ID equals 8, and it's okay with it now because it's no longer referenced. You get what I mean? So as long as there's a reference, it will prevent you from messing things up. So that is how you would do it. So you just learned a new SQL statement here, which is the update. And that's how you change the values in a record. Okay? Now, one last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new endpoint so that we can retrieve a specific value, a specific person. And so here's what that looks like. If we come here, no, not this one, we come here, right? And we're going to change it back to people. Sorry, so that it makes more sense. So let's change it back. In our index.js, we're going to change this back from party to people, right? Remember, that's where the route is. So people. So change this back to people. So that now we can come back to people here. I'll refresh this. All right. This gives us an array, and you can see it's an array here, right? This has the square brackets. This gives us an array of persons, right? Now, if I want my endpoint to give me back one specific person, how do I do it? I want to be able to do this. Here's what I want to be able to do. So I want to be able to do this and pass it an ID and say maybe person 1, and it will give me back the person in the database with an ID of 1. So the way I would do that here, let's walk through it. And I want someone to volunteer to talk me through. What do we see that's new here? Is my route the same? Do I have a route handler for this? Anyone?
No, you don't.
Right. So what file am I going to work in?
So your roots, your people.js file.
That's right. I'll come into my people.js because that's my route handler for /people, anything related to /people. That's my route handler. All right. Okay. So I'm in people.js. So it means that I need to define a new handler, right? So
yep.
what's the method that's being used there? What method is my request using?
It's got to be a get.
Yes. Quick tip. It's right here on the screen. It actually tells
Okay.
you. There's a tip. It actually tells you right there that that's what it's trying to do, and it's failing. So I'm going to do a router.get. Okay. Now let's look at this route. It is people slash, right?
Yep.
It's people slash and then my ID. So what I want to do here, my route definitely starts with slash. But my ID, what's weird about my ID? I want my ID to be variable, right? Because I'm not going to create a route for each person, right? I'm not going to create a route for 1 and create a route for 2 and create a route for 3 and create a route for 4. But I do want to be able to do this. I do want to be able to come to 1 and get the person 1. Now I'm able to come to 2 and get the person at 2. And come to 4 and get the person at 4. Which means I want this part of my route to be a variable, right? That is what we call, that's what we call a route parameter. Okay? And the way you define a route parameter is like this. You do a colon and hold on. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do, right, is that we're going to do a colon and then we'll give it the variable, the route parameter that we want. I want to call it ID. Okay? And again, that we give it our callback, which will be request, response, and there. Okay? This here, the ID part matches whatever value we provide here. So check this out. I can show you that. We're going to say console.log. Now the value, the route parameter is on our request, right? So it's going to be rec.params.id. That's part of why remember what it's called is helpful. So now if I refresh this page here, it actually outputs 1. You see that on my screen?
Because I see. Where do you get the 1 from though?
From my route parameter, I sent it 1 here. If I send it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I press enter, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've created a route, right?
So it's picking data from the server now.
No. My browser is sending it a route parameter. I've made this a variable.
Okay.
Right? It's called a route parameter. And that allows me to pass it whatever value I want here. And that is passed on in my request. And I can retrieve it from my request like this. Request.parameters And then what parameter? ID. I named it ID. So whatever I name it here is what will be called on the params object. Okay? So let's very quickly do this. Let's use that parameter to retrieve a particular person from the database. So we're going to say connection, right? Dot query, right? Select all from people, right? Where ID equals question mark. And unfortunately, we'll have to get into the whole question mark thing next week. But rec.params.id. And then a callback with the error, with an error, our results, right? And then remember here, we say res.send results. If I save this, that's all I need to do. And now if I come back here and I refresh this, now I get the guy at 1. I want to see the guy at 2. Let's change this to 2. And it gives me Jane Doe. And if we look at the database, if I say select all from people, person with ID 2 is Jane. If we look at the person with ID 6, this will be 6. Wale John Jack. And that is my ID 6. And that is it. Like we've literally in what? 3 lines, well, 5 lines, created a whole endpoint to retrieve a specific record from the database and return it to the browser. Okay? Let's break it down very quickly. We have about 2 more minutes. Let's break it down very quickly. We want an endpoint that we can pass a parameter, a route parameter, a value, right? So what we did was we created an endpoint that we could pass an ID parameter, and we named that parameter with a colon and the name of the parameter. No, not the name, a colon and the identifier for the parameter, right? Because it actually is just a variable, right? We can retrieve that parameter on the request object. So the request object has a parameters object in it, and then every parameter that's defined, right, we can retrieve by its identifier right there. So that's what we did. And then we executed a query that is essentially just select from people where ID equals, and then the question mark is like, we then pass it this variable. What the engine does, what the database engine does, is it replaces this question mark with whatever this value is. This is done for security reasons, right? This is done this way for security reasons. Next session, I will explain that in detail because this is critically important. And that's it. And then the results we get for that query, we return. Simple. Now, since we're expecting to get only one item, let's not return an array. Let's return the first element of the array. How do you return the first element of the results array? Anyone? Someone, please. Anyone. How do you return the first element of the results array?
Zero.
Crickets.
There's the result array.
Yes, but no, I want to return the first element in an array.
Isn't it 0?
Yes. It's the element at 0. Perfect. Now, so how do I write that? So I have the array is called results. How do I return the element at 0? Come on, someone.
But it's good. Is it return or something?
Yeah, this one is tough.
Return?
No.
Okay.
Remember your array syntax. What makes you know it's an array? Does this look familiar?
Well, what's that phrase you used?
Square bracket?
Curly something?
These are square brackets. Remember, arrays
Square
are
bracket, yeah,
square
okay.
brackets.
Yeah.
So square, arrays at 0 index. So the first element is the element at index 0. And so, because I want to return the person object rather than the array, here it is returning an array. I can see that because it has square brackets, right? And I can see that this is a JSON object because it's curly brackets. I only want to return the JSON object, not the array. So rather than returning the array, which is results, I say, hey, return the first element of the array. And there.
Well, let's be... Oh.
That's it.
Oh.
That's it. No long story about it. Like, just return the first element of the array. That's it.
So,
Now, because my query is by ID.
Yeah. So you only had one answer.
It will only have one if it finds an answer. If it doesn't find an answer, let's say I'm trying to access 6, 7, whatever, some random number. Look at that. It returns nothing. Because there's nothing matching them. Okay. So in the next class, when we talk about security and we talk about error handling, I'll show you how to handle this error where, hey, the person's trying to get something that doesn't exist. Right now, it says nothing. It still returns the 200 status. Okay. But hey, this is not okay because there's nothing found. We should actually return an error code. We'll talk about that in the next class. Okay, we'll talk about security and we'll talk about error handling. All right. Any questions?
Yes, I need some help.
Well, pertaining to what we've done. Any questions pertaining to what we've done today? Sorry, your audio is gone. We can't hear you.
I have a question pertaining to SQL.
Okay, yes.
In the people table of that SQL, where you deleted those, like the primary identifier 4 and 5. I was wondering, like, is there a way you could insert new values into those places you deleted and then reorder the primary identifier so you could read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again?
So you can insert new records into those empty slots, right? But the database won't reorder. And the reason is because those IDs may already be in use as foreign keys in other table. You get what I mean? So once a primary key is assigned, it typically is not changed for that record. Now, if you delete the record, then that primary key is available for use again. but the database will not automatically, because that field is not an ordering field. It's not there for ordering. It's there for identification. You get what I mean? Think about it. It's like if someone kicks it, right? If someone kicks the bucket, so if someone kicks it, their social security number is no longer in use, right? The Social Security Administration will not reorder everyone social security numbers so that somebody else just happens to be using that. Their number just is no longer in use. Now, maybe a baby is born in 15 years or 20 years. I think there's a time span after which social security numbers can be reassigned or reused when the person has kicked it, right? Then it's assigned to that new baby. But it's not automatically, like, they don't shift them around because it's a unique identifier that identifies an individual. So the same thing with database records. The primary key is a unique identifier. It's not there for ordering reasons. You can order by it if you happen to have a sequential primary key. But in some more complex systems, the primary key is actually not sequential. It's actually generated by, what's called a UUID generator, right? In which case, you can't order by it. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, so we'll end the class here, barring any other questions, and then we can just take a quick look at what are we missing again? The MySQL issues.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Wow, that person has stereo sound. It went from one ear to the other. All right. So that's it. Thanks, everyone, and see you on Tuesday. Please practice this between now and Tuesday. Practice, play the videos over again, play with the database and endpoints, and get together on Tuesday. Okay. All right. So I will stop recording, and let's deal with the issues people have.
Go and read your Bible and do what we said.